Good morning, you guys, it's Karen, and I wanted to come and do a HRT update and to tell you that I am actually stopping it just now, but I'm not sure that that's going to be a permanent stop. It could be temporary, it could be for a year or so. I definitely, it's not something I have decided to never take. I do think it would be good for me to take in terms of my risk of heart attack, but I think that that's more important post-menopause. But pretty early on post-menopause. Anyway, let me tell you, I wrote down my notes. I thought about this so much, and I wrote down my notes on what were the symptoms I had of menopause and how many of them have been addressed by HRT, because I've been on HRT now for 5 months. I think it's 5 months. It's either 4 months or 5 months. I was first on the tablets, and I was on the tablets for at least 2 months. I think it was more like 3 months, because I remember I had to phone to get another prescription, and I actually got changed over to patches because of my headaches, and so I've now been on patches for 2 months. So I know that I've been on the patches for 2 months. I initially wanted to try HRT mostly because of my headaches and my migraines and my foggy brain and everything that goes with a migraine, because it's been getting worse and worse over the last 3 years. I've had migraines since I was 17, and I had been taken off the pill at one point, and that had helped significantly. For a short amount of time it had helped, because estrogen can in some people help migraines, they can in some people worsen them. So I haven't been on the pill for many years. I then tried the coil, and that was a whole nother video talking about birth control, but and the coil did not work for me at all. It was agony. So the fact that I'd started suffering worse migraines in the last 3 years and this foggy brain that I couldn't cope with, I just thought, is this to do with the migraine or is this to do with my hormones? Because 3 years ago I would have been 45, which is kind of an age of the perimenopause. I then did that blood test, and it was showing that I had, literally my estrogen was on the borderline of being low estrogen and in the range that you would expect to see in a postmenopausal woman. So I decided that it was worth giving this HRT a go, because I also had other symptoms that could be attributed to menopause. So I had sleep issues. I just could not get to sleep. I couldn't stay asleep. And then there were the bladder issues that, all right, I already have bladder issues, as you guys know, but they were worse at night. Nighttime had kind of been cured for me with the medication I was on, but it seemed like the problems were coming back, and I was getting up constantly in the night. And I couldn't decide, is the bladder, am I waking up because I need a wee, or am I awake, therefore I'm noticing that I need a wee, you know? So sleep issues, bladder issues, possibly the headache, the hot flushes. That was something that I don't think I'd have gone on the HRT just for the hot flushes, but they were becoming troublesome, I suppose you could say. You know, I was just like, oh my God, I'm so hot, I can't cool down. But like I said, that's not something I would, that in itself would have made me take the HRT. And then I had this joint pain, particularly in my hands and in these two fingers. I remember I would wake up and they would be really hurting, and they'd get to the point where I felt like I couldn't lift up my hair tools and things like that. Again, I have joint pain already from having Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, but it seemed to be worse. So those are the things that were on my list, but the main reason for me was to see if it helped with my migraines and with the foggy brain and the pain of the migraine. So I took it, and then found out that the tablets were not recommended for people with migraines because the hormones are so up and down on it. And so I was changed to patches, and so I was really hopeful. And at the start of the HRT, even with the tablets, the first couple of weeks I felt like they might be making a difference to my headaches. Sorry, I keep referring to them as headaches. I know that I have seen posts where people with migraines don't like us talking about them as headaches, but to me, the migraine is more than just a headache. A headache is part of it, albeit a splitting headache that, you know, you'd rather die than have. I had one yesterday. I mean, I'm having them daily at the moment, and it comes on later in the day, but, you know, I was just crying and saying to my husband, I'd rather not be here than be going through this pain. Like, I need something to take it away. But anyway, so apologies that I refer to them as headaches, but I felt like my headaches were improving. Then they got much worse, which is why I was changed to the patch. Then again on the patch, after a couple of weeks on the patch, it seemed like things were getting better, and then all of a sudden they got worse again. So the the headaches, certainly the migraines, the foggy brain has not been better overall. I'm like, I can see 4 to 5 months I've been on this and it hasn't changed it. 2 months on the patches and it's actually got worse. It's got worse in terms of I have it from when I'm waking, when I wake up. So I woke up with a headache this morning. I have taken a small amount of codeine and some paracetamol, and that is kind of keeping it at bay. But I know by this afternoon it'll be back again. But since being on the HRT, it's been more like 24/7 rather than the afternoon every day, because it's been daily for 3 years, but like I said, it used to only be in the afternoon. And the HRT, it just seems like since taking that, it's been more prevalent in my life. Definitely a no for helping that. With the sleep issues, it did seem to help me. But again, it seemed to help instantly, but there's still been occasions where I can't get to sleep. And the last 3 nights have been exactly that. All right, I go to bed, I feel really tired, but then I close my eyes and I'm like, now I feel wide awake. I just cannot drop off to sleep. And then I'm waking up in the middle of the night and needing to go to the bathroom. So the sleep effects were sort of temporary. The hot flushes it definitely helped with. I've never had a hot flush since taking the HRT, but there is a downside to that, which I'll talk about in the HRT side effects and why I'm stopping it. The joint pain, my joint pain got better taking the HRT, definitely. I have had no finger pain since taking that. Well, not none. I can feel it if I move my fingers, if I use my phone too much, I can feel it, but it was always that way. But I'm not like waking up because my hand hurts. So for me, the 2 things that it mainly worked on were the joint pain and the flushes. And when I say joint pain, it was really only that finger pain that was the most obvious one. And the joint pain, the finger pain and the flushes were not the life-changing things. You know, they were not the things that were number 1 on my list that I wanted to get rid of. It was the migraines and the bladder issues. And like I said, they seem to help with the bladder and sleep issues at first, but haven't done overall. So for me, that in itself was enough to say, let me stop and see what happens to my migraines now being off it. You know, have they just, because my migraines could be increasing because of the menopause or because of the perimenopause. And so if I stop HRT and they get worse, it may be that they were going to get worse anyway and the HRT has kept them at a certain level. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense, but so that was my thinking. But there are also some HRT effects I've had that I don't like at all. And again, I've listed them here. The first one is oily skin. In fact, there's oily skin, acne. I've had spots galore since being on it, carb cravings, and this all comes under the heading of Polycystic Ovary Syndrome. So polycystic ovaries are something that, or PCOS is something I've been fighting since I was like 20 years old. So, you know, nearly 30 years. But I finally got on top of it about between 5 and 10 years ago. I can't exactly remember, but I was working in the NHS and I finally got this drug called cyproterone, and that seemed to keep everything under control. My skin finally got better. My hair wasn't as oily. Everything wasn't as oily. I wasn't as depressed all the time. Not depressed. Depressed isn't the word because I was never actually clinically depressed, but you know, I was very upset all the time and my moods were really up and down. It seemed to control the PCOS for me. I mean, the oiliness on my skin was just beyond. It was literally like, you know, those blotting papers you get? I was using them like every half an hour and soaking through them. And that appeared again. Now, I'm still taking the cyproterone, but the problem is that it's the progesterone that exacerbates my PCOS. And this can happen for a lot of people. Either with or without PCOS, you can be sensitive to progesterone, to the progesterone that's in the HRT you take. I need to take the progesterone because I have a womb. And so I had asked the doctor the last time I spoke to her, which was a couple of weeks ago, is there an alternative? Like, is there something locally I can use down there that's progesterone, like a cream or a pessary or something, and then just have an estrogen only patch? And she said, no, what we would want to do is try you on the Mirena coil again, because the Mirena coil releases progesterone, and then have an estrogen patch. But I just said to her, you know, I had that Mirena coil and it was agony going in, it was agony going out. I was in hospital twice the time I had it, and they thought it had perforated my womb at one point, and it was just awful. I was in so much pain. I was like writhing on the floor, you know, very dramatic, but it was so painful. It was like the worst period pain I've ever had. I don't know whether it was the endometriosis that made it worse or what. Over the years since then, having my cervical exams have been extremely painful, and so I don't think it would be a better experience this time. I think if anything it would be worse, so I wasn't keen on that idea. So polycystic, and there didn't seem to be an, she said no, there's no, I think you can get cream and you can get pessaries, but it's maybe just not on the NHS list or whatever, you know, or not for this area. But certainly she wasn't going to offer me any solutions. If it gets to the point where I did want to take the estrogen, I would ask to see, I would say, could you please refer me to somebody that is an expert in the menopause, and ask them, how do I manage this with my PCOS, you know, and hopefully get something. But that's one of the horrible side effects I had. I also had very dry hair, but that got oily quickly. This has been an absolute nightmare. I was like, you know, the one thing that I've kept, despite my aging, I've ended up, I've got my crow's feet, I've got my droopy eyelids, I've got my crinkly eyelids, I've got smile lines, you know, my neck has got more wrinkly, I've put on weight. The one thing that hadn't changed was the condition of my hair, and I've always had lovely thick hair, and I like my hair, you know, I've always liked my hair. It's the one thing I'm like, yeah, I'm okay with my hair. And my hair just was, either felt completely dry, like I could feel it, and it was like, my goodness, this is like the Sahara Desert, or I would wash it and really condition it well and it would feel nice, but then the following day it would feel completely greasy. So I was just like at my wit's end with that. The funny thing about that is that dry hair, or dry everything, can be a symptom of the menopause, and so really being on HRT, my hair shouldn't be dry, if you know what I mean. But I think that because I've got this polycystic ovary syndrome and this hyperinsulinemia, which is related to the polycystic ovary, there's all these hormone imbalances going on, and it's such, I swear, it's the most complex medical area of all, even more than the brain and the heart, I think, or certainly more than the heart. It's just not logical, you know, there's so many different hormones and there's such an intricate balance. Anyway, what was I talking about? Difference. Weight, by the way, with my weight, I didn't see any difference. I am going to do a video on a weight update. So I'm basically on the same weight as I was a year ago, and I'm okay with that. There's a lot of things I've realised about my weight. There's a lot of things I changed this year that I'm really happy with. I know that I can get on top of my weight under certain conditions, but I'll talk about that in another video. But this didn't make any difference. In fact, if anything, it made things worse because it made me crave carbs, which is something that I had, by eating a low carb diet, doesn't normally happen, but it was happening. And the other one that I said was related to the flushes is I have been freezing cold the whole time. And it is kind of funny because my husband is so patient, I think, with this, because, or tolerant, I suppose you could say, because I was thinking, you know what, I wouldn't be as tolerant as him. Years ago, I used to have the heating blasting. I'd always have the house really, really hot. And it was always like, not a joke, but he'd be like, right, I'm going to have to put my shorts on in a minute. And he would sometimes go to the bedroom, come out in his shorts. And I'm like, it's not that hot, you know. And he'd be like, it bloody is. And he'd sit there in his shorts. He never ever said, can I turn the heating down or anything? Bless him, you know. He was always just like, it is like summer in here. Then when we got Watson, not immediately, but after a couple of years, I was like, oh, I was worried it was too hot for Watson. And also I wanted to try and see if we turned the heating down, if we'd get cuddles off Watson. About this same time, I discovered onesies. Oh my God, I love a onesie. So I would be wearing these thick onesies and the heater would be turned down. And Kev would be like, oh my God, I need to go and he'd go and put jumpers on or his sweatshirt, and he'd come out and socks on, and he'd be sitting on the couch going, can I put the heating on? You know, and occasionally I'd put it on, but I'd be like, right, turn it off now, it's too hot, you know. It never ever worked, by the way, with Watson. We still didn't get cuddles, but I think Watson preferred it because when the heating was on, he would always go and ring his bell and want to go out in the garden, or he'd go and lie on his cool mat. So for the past maybe 4 or 5 years, it's been really cold in this house, but I don't notice it because I've got my lovely onesie on. So I thought that was going to be us again for this winter, but no. I'd put the onesie on and be fine in the evening. I'd be a little bit cold still, but when I then went to bed, I was bloody too hot in the night, because I used to sleep in my onesie. My friend can't believe it. She's like, you actually sleep in it? She sleeps, I don't think she sleeps with anything on though, but no, I need to have my pajamas on or something. So my whole temperature control has gone haywire. So now I wear pajamas in the evening, you know, I put my loungewear on, if you like, in the evening, and I'm bloody freezing, and so the heating is back on again. But then the heating has to go off at night, because otherwise I'm still hot in the night. It's not like the night sweats that I had before. It's not the flushes or the night sweats that I had when I wasn't on HRT, but I just am too hot at night. Like, I need to wear short sleeves, and then other times I'm freezing cold. It's just my temperature control has been all over the place, and I don't like it. So this is another side effect that I had that just sort of added to the weight of why I should stop this and see what happened. The final thing that I wanted to stop it for is I feel like I've suddenly aged overnight. I find it really difficult to do makeup that I like at the moment. And every time I do it, I just look in the mirror and I think, no, don't like my eyes. And I didn't know whether that was aging hitting me all of a sudden, because I know that a lot of women in my family have felt the same way. They've suddenly woke up and gone, that's it, I look old. Or whether it was the HRT, because it was making me a bit crabby. It was bringing out this PCOS side of me, a bit moody, a bit emotional. Was it that? And that will be interesting to see, you know, do I go back to feeling like I can do my makeup and I look okay? Don't get me wrong, I never do my makeup and was like, oh yeah, you look wonderful. But just suddenly I cannot ever do my makeup and go, yeah, I look okay, you know? So I wanted to test that out. And there was two other reasons that I wanted to stop it. One was I've had the Botox in my head. I had it a week and a half ago. So far it hasn't done anything other than give me a pain in the neck, and I've still got the headaches. But she did say she thinks I need more Botox in my neck because of my muscles, but they start off conservatively, which is fair enough. But I want to be able to tell if this Botox is working without wondering if the HRT is making them worse. Hopefully that makes sense to you. And then being off the HRT, I want to see how the migraines are. And so that's one thing that I thought I can only compare if I'm not taking the HRT. Same with the bladder. I want to see what's happening with that. I've been given different options of drugs and operations, as you know. So I want to compare it. And the final reason is, when I spoke to the doctor a couple of weeks ago about, you know, I was asking her if there's any progesterone or whatever you can take. She was telling me, she was asking if I was having any breakthrough bleeding on the patches, and I said to her no, or on the HRT, and I said to her no. I said I actually had none on any of the HRT, other than the day I stopped the HRT tablet. I didn't get the patches until the following day. So there was one full day where I had no tablet and no patch, and I started bleeding, and I had a period for say 3 or 4 days, and then it went away, and I've had nothing since, so nothing for 2 or 3 months. As she was saying, well, that's unusual. A lot of people have breakthrough bleeding with the patches, and that's what puts them off. But actually, I'm the opposite. I had very heavy bleeding before going on the HRT, and that's something that it did seem to that did seem to stop, which I had been told that it wouldn't affect the bleeding at all and that I'd need additional medication for that. I just kept having these heavy periods that would go on for weeks and weeks. And like I said, nothing like that has happened. But the interesting thing that I discussed with the GP was as to, am I right in saying that the breakthrough bleeding is not considered a period? I said, therefore, although it is a monthly breakthrough bleed, when asked when was your last period, that's not what I would refer to. And the way that you kind of know the menopause has happened is when you've had a year without any periods. And I said to her, well, how am I going to know when I'm postmenopausal? And she said, there is no way of knowing. She said, what we assume is when you are 50, you are postmenopausal. If you don't, you can't talk about your periods because you've already been on HRT. And I was like, yeah, that's a bit of a guesswork for me. I would prefer to see if I have any periods without being on HRT that are not breakthrough bleeds. And so that was yet another reason why I thought I would quite like to come off it and see if I go for a year not having a period, then I can say I'm postmenopausal or I'm menopausal, or if I do have periods, I can say I'm perimenopausal, you know, and just sort of know what my body's doing and what stage it's at. There's a lot to think about there, I know. I do watch Menopause Taylor. A lot of you recommend her. I have watched her for a while. There are so many of her videos that I need to watch. The problem is there are certain voices that when my head is hurting, or even when it's not hurting. Right now I have a headache, I can feel it across my head, and I am noise sensitive, and my own voice is one of the ones that really bothers my head. But her voice, even on a low volume, on the lowest volume where it doesn't bother my head, I can't hear her properly. When I turn it up, it sort of bothers me if I've got a migraine, or even if a migraine is due, if you like. And there's so many videos. She's so in depth. She's absolutely amazing. I did consider having a consultation with her, but my hesitation is that she's in the USA, and so she's talking from a point of view of being able to choose your gynecologist, or being able to choose what you get, and it's just not the case here in the UK. It's very, very different healthcare system here. And the other thing was, you know, it does say that perhaps one consultation isn't enough, because we were thinking, right, well, let's spend the £200 and have a consultation. But I think it may be that 2 or 3 would be needed. And like I said, it would make more sense for me to go to somebody here in the UK. That's everything to tell you about that, I think. I hope that was interesting for those of you that are on or just before this journey or after this journey. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But I think it's something you've really got to do that suits yourself. You know, you've really got to have the knowledge and try and find the knowledge as well. And that's the really difficult thing. I think it's easy to say that you need to advocate for yourself, because I think you do, but I also think that it's easier for me because I have an interest and experience in the medical industry. You know, I went into the NHS and worked in hospitals and thought it was like I had my dream job. You know, I was like, oh look, I'm in the hospital. I loved it, and I loved everything medical. And the fact that I was given these files of research studies and that it was my job to read through them all, I just thought was heavenly, you know. And so it's something I'm interested in, whereas you've got somebody like my husband who has zero interest in anything medical. Same with my friend, actually. And so it's very difficult for him to be an advocate for himself. I try to make sure I do that for him. But it is very difficult if you don't have an interest or even an understanding of medical things, because it takes a lot of time to research things, you know. But I think it is worth it with something as big as the menopause, or something that's really affecting your life. It's worth doing as much research as you can. Right, that's everything from me. I'm going to stop rambling because I think this was a pretty long video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll speak to you again soon.